At the beginning of the movie, a girl wakes up and finds herself in a room. She tries to open the door, but it's locked. So she knocks and calls out, asking if anyone is there and where she is. A voice from the next room tells her to keep quiet. Curious, she approaches the wall and asks who it is, and if they know why she's there. The voice, belonging to another girl, tells her to stop complaining as it won't help and warns that they could come back anytime. When she asks who they are, the girl replies, the doctor and the nurses. She then reveals that her name is Anne. Confused, Anne asks how she knows her name and whether they've met before, to which the girl simply responds, I know you're Anne. Just then, a cockroach crawls out from behind a picture, prompting Anne to grab a Bible and smash it. But when she lifts the book, the cockroach is gone, only to find it on the cover, causing her to panic and toss the book aside. Anne then sees herself in the mirror and is shocked to find that her appearance has changed. Terrified, she begins to cry, wondering what's happening to her. Just then, two nurses enter, and Anne rushes toward them for help. But they restrain her, force her onto the bed, and inject her with a sedative, telling her that her name is Anne and that she's ill and experiencing hallucinations and needs medical treatment. The next day, Anne's appearance changes again, and looking around, she says the place doesn't even look like a hospital, asking the girl if she knows how long they'll be kept there. The girl replies, until we all die. She explains that there's a demon called Vertigo, a monster with the head of a deer that comes out at night to hunt them down. Anne says, but that creature lives in the woods, to which the girl says we're probably in the woods right now. Just then, the doctor enters and asks, shall we talk? Anne asks why she's there, and the doctor replies because she doesn't remember who she is. She explains that Anne isn't the only one, and there are several patients with the same condition. She says, according to their records, her name is Anne, but Anne says it doesn't sound like her name at all. The doctor tells her not to always believe what people say, and that her name isn't as important as who she truly is. That, she says, is what she's there to help Anne discover, but only if she is willing to cooperate, so they can explore her subconscious. Anne asks if she is trying to hypnotize her, to which the doctor replies that to find out who she is, she must discover it herself, and encourages Anne to try remembering where she came from. She instructs Anne to clear her mind and focus on the first image that appears. Anne sees herself in a car. It's raining, and her face shifts, and then suddenly, she transforms again. She asks, how am I supposed to feel when my face keeps changing? And I don't even know which one is really mine. The doctor responds, the real question is, has your face actually changed? Then, noticing Anne's hand, she tells her to stop biting her nails, warning her that they're delicate, and she'll ruin them and that they'll keep chipping away, bit by bit. That night, a girl knocks on Anne's door, urging her to run because the place is dangerous. Anne blocks the door, asking if she's the same girl from before since her voice sounds different. The girl snaps, are you crazy? But Anne refuses to leave, and the girl warns, it's coming, and it's going to kill you. Anne asks, who's coming? To which the girl says, Vertigo. Anne asks, how do I know you're telling the truth? Because you're sick, just like me. To which the girl replies, you can't hide in there forever. And suddenly, eerie music begins to play. Anne watches in fear as the girl runs away in terror, and to her horror, she sees the demon chasing after her. A few moments later, she hears the girl's screams, which eventually fade, and when Anne looks out again, the girl reappears, banging on the door and pleading, are you really going to watch it kill me? The demon then grabs the girl and slams her head against the door repeatedly until she dies. It then tries to open Anne's door, and she breaks down in tears, desperately trying to hold the door shut. And after a tense moment, the demon finally walks away. The next morning, when the nurse enters the room, Anne runs out, but the nurse doesn't follow. Anne rushes to the other room, only to find it empty, and as she steps back into the hallway, she sees a group of nurses and a doctor, bringing the girl on a stretcher. The nurses grab Anne, escort her back to her room, and inject her with a sedative, causing her to immediately calm down and drift into sleep. Later, Anne tells the doctor she's terrified and wants to leave, to which the doctor reminds her no one was there and no blood was found when she came out. Anne insists she saw the deer demon, to which the doctor explains that stress can distort reality. When Anne asks how long she must stay, The doctor says she can leave once she discovers who she truly is and urges her to focus on her deepest fear. Anne finds herself standing on a beach, watching as a man walks into the sea to retrieve a hat, but he drowns. Anne begins to cry, and a man says, "Cut," only for Anne to wake up. That night, Anne leaves her room and urges a girl to run, warning that the deer demon is coming. The girl asks who she is, and Anne tells her to run if she wants to live. As the girl hesitates, they hear another girl screaming. Anne rushes over to her room and finds a girl holding a bathroom door shut, and she claims that the deer demon is inside. But when Anne opens the door, it's empty. Confused, the girl insists she saw it, and that it tried to follow her out. Anne suggests they need to escape, but when asked how, Anne shakes her head. Then the girl says her name is Anne, and asks if they too are Anne too. Anne 1, puzzled, wonders how many Annes are here, to which Anne 2 suggests checking the other rooms. The three of them cautiously head downstairs, following the nurse at a distance, and they watch as she locks a cabinet containing some files, and then hides the keys beneath a flower pot. After she leaves, Anne 1 retrieves the keys and opens the cabinet, and to their shock, every file lists the patient's name as Anne. Anne 1 then opens a locker and finds a phone inside, and to her surprise, it unlocks with her thumb. Just then, Anne 2 screams and asks, "Who are you?" Realizing her reflection, Anne 1 sees her face has changed once again. She rushes to them, asking, "Did they see her face change?" And they nod in agreement. Anne 1 says, "They've been lying to us," and Anne 3 admits, "My face changed before too." Anne 2, confused, asks, "What are you talking about?" But only then the music plays, prompting them to flee. But suddenly, Vertigo appears in front of them, and they all break into a panic, running for their lives. Anne 2 slips, and her glasses fall off, and as she scrambles to find them, she realizes Vertigo approaching her. Terrified, she gets up and runs blindly, eventually stumbling into a room where she sees a shadowy figure running ahead. Struggling to see, she follows the figure by feeling along the wall, which leads her into a dark theater. Carefully, she moves forward, using the backs of the chairs for support. But suddenly, she hears a sound and freezes in terror as the demon approaches. Vertigo steps closer and gently places her glasses back on her eyes. And with her vision restored, Anne sees the demon. It then snatches the glasses off her face and gouges out her eyes, and the next moment, we see her lifeless body lying still. Meanwhile, Anne 1 says they should check on Anne 2, but Anne 3 says it's not the time to play heroine. She then runs from there, with Anne 1 reluctantly following, and they enter a dark room, but after a tense moment, Anne 1 stumbles back out in fear. Anne 3 tries to follow, but Vertigo appears and knocks her down. She cries for help, but Anne 1, looking at the Vertigo, says, "This isn't the time to play the heroine," before fleeing, and Vertigo drags Anne 3 back into the dark room. Anne sees a man and follows him, calling out for help, but suddenly, Vertigo appears, forcing her to turn and run in a panic to escape. She then finds herself in a dining area, and terrified, she runs towards the door to escape, but finds it locked. Anne hides under the chairs, and suddenly the lights go off and music begins to play. Anne watches in horror as Vertigo searches for her, and after a tense moment, it walks away. But after a while, it pulls a cloth which causes the chairs to fall, and Anne screams in pain. The demon then approaches her, and she stares at it helplessly, asking, "Why do you have to kill?" But suddenly, she jolts awake and realizes it was just a nightmare. Anne 1 discovers that her face has changed once again. And just then, a girl from the other room calls out, asking if anyone is there. Through their conversation, it becomes clear that Anne 1 has now become Anne 2, and she begins repeating the same things that Anne 2 once told her, that her name is Anne, and that all of them are named Anne. Suddenly, a cockroach crawls out from behind a picture, and as Anne 1 tries to kill it, it quickly retreats. But then, the other Anne kills a cockroach in her room and starts screaming, which gives Anne 1 a headache, and she yells at her to be quiet. The other Anne begins frantically asking the nurse what's happening to her, and did she saw her face change. Anne 1 realizes she was the girl next door, and as she tries to flee, the nurses catch her and inject her with a sedative, causing her to calm down and fall asleep. Later, she asks the doctor to tell her who she is, to to which the doctor points at the mirror and says, "That's you." She tells her that she must first accept the face she sees, whether she likes it or not. But what truly matters is discovering who she really is. And for that, she must hypnotize her, because the subconscious never lies. Anne finds herself in a hall filled with many other girls, and she sees a woman walk in and place her hand on one of the girl's shoulders. The girl stands up, glances at Anne, and then leaves with the woman. That night, Anne cautiously steps out of her room and enters the room next door, where the other Anne sits, frightened, and asks, "What do you want?" Anne tells her, "We have to run as it's dangerous here." But the other Anne says, "I am not going anywhere." She then asks, "Are you the girl I spoke to earlier? As your voice sounds different," to which Anne replies, "This afternoon, you saw a cockroach come out from behind the picture and killed it, right? Then the psychiatrist came in and hypnotized you." The other Anne asks, "Were you spying on me?" To which Anne says, "I was you before." She then adds, "By midnight, all the staff will be gone, and the last one to leave will be the nurse." Later, as the nurse leaves, Anne tells other Anne that tonight, "I'll be dead, and tomorrow, it'll be you. But if they do things differently, the consequences will also be different." They both enter the other room, and Anne says it's the first night, so there's no Anne here yet. After that, they both go downstairs, where Anne retrieves the keys from under the pot and takes a file out of the cabinet. The other Anne asks, "Has she done it before?" To which Anne says yes, "But I am breaking the cycle so you won't have to repeat it tomorrow." Anne discovers that they've been there for 3 years, and meanwhile, the other Anne finds a phone in the locker. Anne gently says, "That's mine, I'll unlock it for you." But the other Anne unlocks it herself and says, "It's my phone." However, the wallpaper shows someone else's photo, and in the next moment, the other Anne's face changes. Shocked, Anne tells her that they've been lied to, and when the other Anne asks, "Why?" Anne admits she doesn't know. The other Anne shows her the phone and says she's seen the man during the hypnosis. That's when Anne realizes the doctor has been manipulating their minds, and at that moment, the music begins to play. Panicked, Anne says, "It's coming," and the other Anne asks, "If I go with you, you won't leave me behind, right?" To which Anne assures her, "Not this time." They then check the lockers for a weapon, and Anne finds a pair of scissors. They move forward cautiously, but Anne hands the scissors to the other Anne and tells her, "Go wait in there, and I'll lure it here." Anne returns to the hallway and waits for the demon, and after some time, it appears. As it begins to move, Anne takes off running, and meanwhile, the projector in the theater switches on. The other Anne stands up, her shadow cast onto the screen, but to her horror, the demon rises silently behind her. At the same time, Anne turns back to check, but then she freezes in terror as she sees the demon emerging from the theater, dragging Anne's lifeless body behind it. Panicked, Anne flees from there, and in a desperate attempt to escape, she makes her way to the roof of the building, but to her shock, she finds that it's a set where the shooting is going on. Confused as she runs, we see that they're not in a building, but on a massive ship. She rushes to a room where plastic sheets are hanging all around, and just as she begins to feel safe, the demon attacks, wrapping one of the sheets tightly around her face. Anne struggles, gasping for air, desperately trying to break free, but slowly, her breathing fades, and she goes limp. However, suddenly, she jolts awake, rips the plastic from her face, and runs. The demon pursues her with a pair of scissors, and as she bends, it stabs her. But she strikes it with a metal pipe. The blow shatters its mask, revealing a human face beneath it. Anne says, "You're not a demon," and in response, the person pushes her off the ship, with which its mask also falls off. Anne suddenly wakes up, but this time, she's no longer on the ship, but on a beach, beside her boyfriend. The man says, "You slept like a baby," and as Anne checks her phone, she notices a game on it. She tells him she had the strangest nightmare, saying maybe she's just been playing too many video games, to which he gently reassures her that he is here. He asks, "Want to leave now?" But Anne replies, "Let's stay a while longer," saying, "I feel at peace when I'm with you." When he asks, "Why is that?" she says, "Because I can be my true self with you," to which he asks, "Aren't you always yourself?" Now, when he drops her off at her home, Anne's mother comes outside, and Anne walks into the house without saying a word. The next morning, while Anne is scrolling through Instagram, her mother tells her they're going on vacation next week. To which Anne replies, "You should have asked me if I even wanted to go." Only then does she notice a pamphlet for a tropical cruise on the table, and her mother reminds her about her doctor's appointment. Next, while waiting in the car, Anne watches her mother hide the keys under the flower pot. The doctor asks, "You've played so many characters in your dream. How does that feel?" To which Anne responds, "Dreaming about getting killed is no fun." The doctor replies, "But you keep coming back, just like in a game." To which Anne says, "A game with no rules where you can never win." The doctor then asks, "Do you know where the girls you played in your dream are from? And are any of them from the real world?" She picks up a glass and adds, "It's a shame. I don't know how to do hypnosis." She pauses, then continues, "You're young, and your true self is still in flux, so you want to be someone else. But first, you have to accept that the face you're seeing is you, whether you like it or not." Later, at school, Anne overhears her classmates talking about posting something from their fake accounts. "Curious?" she asks. "Do you guys have fake accounts?" To which one of them replies, "Who doesn't?" saying, "Don't play dumb and bet you have tons of them." Anne checks her phone and finds multiple Instagram accounts. They all head to the toilet, where Anne checks her phone, and one of the girls says something to Anne. But when Anne asks, "What did you say?" the other girl replies, "She told me, not you," saying, "My name is Anne." And the other girl then tells her that my name is Anne too. Suddenly, the room goes dark, and the door swings open with a creak, and Vertigo steps in. Terrified, Anne pulls her legs up, and then she hears another Anne scream, and to her horror, she hears Vertigo killing the girls. In shock, Anne rushes out, but to her horror, she finds that Vertigo has killed both girls, and as it turns toward her, Anne screams, bolts out of the bathroom, and locks the door. Just then, other Annes enter, hearing her scream, and she tells them it's in the bathroom. But when the other Anne opens the door, there's no one there. Confused, Anne swears it was in there. The other Anne says, "Let's get out of here." And Anne 1 asks, "Are you two also Anne?" The other Anne asks, "How many of us are here?" To which Anne 1 answers, "It's just us." The other Anne suggests, "Let's go to the nurse's office and look at the files." But Anne 1 checks her pocket, pulls out her phone and says, "No need, I've got it." She looks at the other Anne and says, "I was you before," and the same actions always lead to the same consequences. The 3 of them rush downstairs, desperate to escape, but suddenly, the lights flicker on. Anne 1 points at the other Anne, exclaiming, "Her face," and the other Anne's face begins to distort, and as she touches it, her features shift. Then, Anne 3's face starts to twist as well, and she also changes. And finally, Anne 1's face morphs too, and her face changes too. Anne 2 says, "This is completely insane," but Anne 1 suggests, "We need to calm down." She pauses, recalling Anne's words, "I bet you have tons of fake accounts." And at that moment, the music begins to play, pushing them to flee in panic. But suddenly, they stop hearing a sound, prompting them to retreat. But Vertigo strikes one of them, knocking her down. Anne 3 cries for help, but Anne 2 says this isn't the time to play heroine, and Anne 1 finds that she has changed. Anne 2 then runs, and after thinking for a while, Anne 1 also runs, and Vertigo drags Anne 3. Anne 1 and Anne 2 enter a room, and are stunned to see several other Annes reading. "If we do things differently, the consequences will change. And this isn't the time to play the heroine," Anne 1 says. "So this room is real." And suddenly, she hears footsteps and quickly pulls Anne 2 down beside her. A woman then enters the room, and they watch silently as she walks over to one of the girls, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. The girl stands up and begins to follow her without a word. The woman leads her to a stretcher and instructs her to sit, after which a nurse injects her with a sedative, and without resistance, the girl is taken away. Anne 2 asks, "What we are?" To which Anne 1 says, "We are Anne, and we are not," explaining they're just avatars. Anne 2 asks what she means, to which Anne 1 pulls out her phone and reveals Anne, who just got killed, was a fake account. When Anne 2 asks, "Who's the real Anne?" Anne 1 replies, "Everyone wants to be her." Suddenly, all the exhaust fans stop, and the other Anns begin to convulse violently, collapsing from their chairs one by one until eventually they all die. Alarmed, Ann 1 and Ann 2 rise to their feet, and Ann 1 says, "Those who aren't chosen are of no use." Moments later, Vertigo enters the room, and Ann 1 says, "Only the real Ann will get out of here." She grabs a chair and charges at it, but he swiftly knocks her down. Ann 2 rushes to help, but he throws her aside as well. Vertigo then approaches Ann 2 and begins to strangle her, but Ann 1 knocks it down. However, when she checks on Ann 2, she realizes she's already dead. Ann 1 then removes Vertigo's mask, and to her shock, she realizes it's not a demon, but just another Ann. With this, Ann's face distorts, and Ann 1's face changes again. She then stands up and puts on the mask, and at the same time, a doctor is trying to revive the real Ann. But when he fails, he says they will try again later. The next morning, when Ann wakes up, she notices the picture frame lying upside down on the floor. Just then, a cockroach crawls across the wall, prompting her to grab a Bible and throw it at the insect. And when she checks the book, she's startled to find the words "Help me" scrawled across one of the pages. Confused, she picks up the book and flips its page, only to discover a sketch drawn on it. She turns another page and sees the message "I thought we would be together forever" written. Page after page, she finds more phrases, until suddenly, the doctor enters the room and tells her that she's the first Ann to pick it up and read it. Ann replies that she's read it before, prompting the doctor to ask, "Do you remember where you read it?" Ann stays silent, to which the doctor asks, "Did you read it or did you write it?" and suggests they use this in their session. Next, the doctor tells her to feel the book and let it take her back to where it came from. Suddenly, Ann's hand begins to sink into it, and she finds herself in her room with photos and sketches covering the walls. She sits at her computer, where her Facebook account is already logged in. She checks the comments on a photo, and they're all cruel and negative. After this, she starts playing a game, but suddenly a Vertigo appears that frightens her, jolting her awake. The doctor says her face didn't change this time and begins to leave, but Ann asks, "Then why did you lie?" The doctor replies, "You weren't ready?" And Ann asks, "Ready for what?" but finds that the doctor is gone. Suddenly, the lights go out and Ann recalls, "If we do things differently, the consequences change too." She rushes downstairs to the kitchen, frantically trying to escape, but Vertigo suddenly knocks her down. It then tries to kill her, but Ann wakes up and struggles to break free. Vertigo holds tight, but someone knocks it down and its mask catches fire. Ann is shocked to see it's Anthony, the game's hero, who reaches out and says, "Let's go." He brings her out of the ship, and they both leave in his car, and when Ann looks back, she sees Vertigo watching them. Suddenly, they hit an animal, prompting Anthony to stop the car. He then gets out of the car to check, and Ann remains in the car, but to her shock, Anthony suddenly changes into her dad, and in a flashback, we see it was her dad who was entering the sea to retrieve her hat. Ann gets out of the car and walks over to her dad, only to realize they've hit a deer, now lying on the road and taking its final breath. Her dad retrieves a gun from the car and shoots the deer to put it out of its misery. He then turns to Ann with a smile, but before she can react, Vertigo stands up and Ann watches in horror as it shoots her dad, killing him instantly. In a flash, she finds herself back on the ship, with Vertigo now pointing a gun at her. It says, "There are only 2 of us left," to which Ann asks, "Do you have to kill them all? And isn't there another way out of this?" Vertigo replies, "There can be only one Ann, the real Ann," to which Ann asks, "And the real Ann is you?" Vertigo steps closer to Ann, presses the gun against her forehead, then suddenly hands it to her, and Ann quickly turns the gun on Vertigo. Vertigo says that you will have to choose, and then removes her mask and adds softly, "Ann is not a demon, not like me," and then urges Ann to kill her. Ann hesitates, torn, and after a long moment of silence, she finally says, "I don't want to be Ann," before shooting and killing herself. Ann finds herself back in her room, and the doctor asks, "She thinks now that there is only one Ann left, that it is all over?" Ann asks, "Was all of this you doing?" To which the doctor replies, "No, it was Ann's." She then opens a Facebook profile and explains that Ann created her based on her real-life psychiatrist. Every one of them, these personalities, was formed from people Ann either admired, hated, or wished to become. They're trapped inside her mind, doomed to roam her subconscious like lost spirits. They are her disposable souls. Anne asks, "But why did Anne create so many of us?" To which the doctor answers, "Because the world is too frightening for a girl to be her true self all the time." It's then revealed that Anne, a popular cosplayer, had deliberately jumped from a building after being relentlessly bullied and harassed online. The scene shifts to the hospital, and the doctor tells Anne that they now exist endlessly in this half-alive body. Anne pleads with the real Anne, telling her to stop hiding behind us. But the doctor says, "Maybe the only way out is by getting rid of us all." We then see Anne and the doctor standing on the rooftop, and as they jump together, Anne's real body begins to stir, and she suddenly opens her eyes, and the movie ends there.